If I told you a man used his own hands to set fire to the house that fed him, would you believe me? If I told you the woman he thought was his prize came wrapped in a secret that could break three families at once, would you stay to hear it? If I told you the quiet wife carried the loudest thunder, would you keep listening till the last shock? And if you're just joining us, hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up and turn on the notifications bell so you never miss a story like this one. Let me tell you a story, true as the heat in Lagos and smooth as palm oil on white rice. I am the storyteller, and I will carry you through streets you know, through compound whispers and market noise, and betrayal that tastes like bitter leaf. Everything happened here in Nigeria, where drums talk and walls have ears. It began in a four-bedroom duplex in Magodo, Lagos, with Bongeville climbing the fence and two boys playing football in the compound while their father, a man named Kelvin, ironed his agbada like he was smoothing his conscience. His wife, Amaka, was the kind of woman who walked like quiet morning and smiled like Sunday morning. She had given Kelvin two fine sons, Chimdi, whose laughter could scatter clouds, and little Ekene, who still mixed Yoruba and Igbo when he spoke. Neighbors said Kelvin was blessed. He liked that talk. In fact, he fed on it. In Lagos, some men eat food, some eat attention. Kelvin hates both. On a Tuesday morning that smelled of harmattan dust and fresh akara, Kelvin cleared his throat and said, Amaka, I want to marry a second wife. He said it like someone ordering suya at night markets. He didn't blink. He didn't cough. He just dropped it, bam, on the dining table, between a jar of Milo and a basket of oranges. Amaka looked at him and nothing moved on her face. Where would it move to? Her father had taught her, if you cannot shift a stubborn goat by shouting, just open the gate and remove the yam. So she said nothing. The next day, Kelvin repeated it. By evening, he had added a date. Introduction next weekend. Prepare to welcome your co-wife with open arms, he said, adjusting his wristwatch like time was his personal driver. Amaka didn't argue, or cry, or roll on the floor. Lagos women know how to keep their tears in a small bottle and drink it later like medicine. She cooked stew. She fed her boys. She ironed her wrapper. She slept. But inside her head, plans were arranging themselves like chairs before an important meeting. You must know one thing. The money that Kelvin wore like perfume, the cars, the contract flows, the Ikoyi cocktails, was not his sweat. It came from the engine room of Amaka's father's company, Okudili and Daughters Holdings, registered in a way that amused God and confused the men. It moved like water from a hidden borehole, paperwork, shares, sign-offs, a river flowing under the surface. Kelvin thought the river loved him. He forgot that the tap obeys the hand that installed it. He threw the introduction in grand style at a hall in Surulere. Women wore gele like crowns. Men wore agbada like wings. Champagne laughed in ice buckets. Fuji music shook the walls, and Kevin's black Range Rover carried rice like a small truck. Gossipers ate, filmed and posted. Amaka sat and smiled, greeting aunties and uncles with respect, wearing coral beads that whispered about old money and quiet power. When the traditional wedding came, 2 weeks later in the bride's village near Owerri, Kelvin danced as if the ground owed him praise. Sprays of Naira rained like the first rain in April. Amaka clapped politely. She did not blink when he raised the bride's hand. Ada, a slim, fair lady with eyes like soft plantain, and a smile that asked for pity before it asked for love. Then, on the weekend, Kelvin took Ada to Port Harcourt for a white wedding that swallowed his savings like a hungry river. Amaka packed her bags. She carried her two sons. She drove her own car. She sold the house because the documents wore her signature like a gold chain. She sold the furniture, the fancy artworks from Lekki. the Italian tiles Kelvin boasted about. She transferred the vehicles that were in her name. The company accountant smiled when she returned all corporate papers to her father's desk in Enugu, where the old man kept a leather Bible on top of every file. It was not revenge, it was restoration. She took what was ours and left what was not. When Kelvin came back to Lagos on Monday night with confetti still in his shoe and glitter on his collar, he opened the gate and met silence. No car, no couch, no scent of stew, no laughter of boys. The house echoed like an empty drum. He called her. His voice trembled.
Baby, you know I don't have money right now. I spent everything on this wedding. You never told me you didn't want me to marry again. I thought you were fine. The new wife, she's pregnant. Your fellow woman, Amaka, have pity.
Amaka laughed, small and soft, like spoon tapping porcelain. Start a new life with your pregnant wife, she said. But know this, the easy life you had with me, you will never see it again. She ended the call and lay back on a hotel bed in Enugu with her sons between her and the window, watching the night carry Lagos away from her heart. Now, Lagos is a city that loves noise, but carries news in whisper. Word spread. Some said Amaka was wicked. Some said Kelvin deserved it. Some said Ada had tied Kelvin with waist beads that smelled like sugar. Some said Amaka's father was the real lion behind the gate. While they argued, life moved. Amaka rented a modest duplex in Independence Layout, Enugu, with hibiscus by the gate and a mango tree leaning like an old auntie. She enrolled the boys in a good school where teachers still wrote chalk like they were writing love letters to the future. She joined the church choir, even though she sang like a shy bird. She started going to the company HQ, not because she needed to prove anything, but because she wanted to feel the heartbeat of her inheritance. Her father, Chief Okudili, looked at her one afternoon over Okpa and Zobo.
Wanyoma, are you ready to be who you were born to be?
He asked. Amaka swallowed and nodded. Some crowns are heavy until you remember they were measured for your head. Meanwhile, Kevin tasted the life he said he wanted. Daily, the ones grew teeth. The small business fronts he used to boast about went quiet because the real pipes were never his. Ada, thin-voiced, pretty, always one breath away from tears, sat in the new rented apartment in Ogudu and placed her hand on her tummy like a prayer. She posted smiley weddings on Instagram and hid receipts in the wardrobe that smelled of rain and new paint. Kelvin began to sell things. First, the watches, then the small SUV. He tried to sell his shares in Okudili and Daughters, only to discover the shares were like chairs in a church. You cannot carry them out because ushers are watching. He called Amaka again. This time, his pride wore slippers.
Please help me. Just a loan, he said.
My sister, Amaka replied. I left so you can enjoy your choice in peace. She hung up and looked out the window at Enugu's evening sky, soft and low like a blue wrapper. Here the story turns. Destiny likes crossroads, and Enugu has many. One Wednesday, during a side visit to a new company training center at Nike Lake Road, Amaka met a man who looked like the kind of calm that strong people rest inside. His name was Kunle, born in Ibadan, raised in Abuja, now leading a team of architects who build like they were writing poems with cement and glass. He had a small scar by his lip where a childhood bicycle kissed him too hard, and eyes that listened before his mouth did. He treated foremen with respect, joked with laborers, paid extra sand when the truck underdelivered, and apologized to a mango tree before they trimmed it. He did not recognize Amaka at first. He only saw a woman in a sun hat asking good questions. A week later, he learned her name and swallowed his surprise. Lagos Gist had traveled to Enugu faster than night bus. He had heard. Their first conversation outside work was about rain.
I like how Enugu rain falls as if it knows your name, Kule said. Lagos rain just beats everybody.
Amaka laughed, and the laugh made room in her chest. They started to talk. About the boys, about food. She loved abacha. He loved amala. About childhood games. She was queen of 10-10. He built kites that never flew straight. about fears they could name and fears they could only hint at. She told him she did not want drama. He said he did not want to be a project. They shook hands like partners and let friendship choose the speed. Then came scandal because Lagos does not sit quietly while other cities enjoy peace. One night at 11:43 p.m., Amaka's phone rang. A strange female voice, hot and hurried. Please, I know you have every right to hate me, but I need help. Kelvin has not paid rent. Landlord is shouting. I am pregnant. I am scared. The voice said. It was Ada. Fear makes people brave. Amaka sat up, listened to the tremble under the words, and tasted an old thing in her mouth that was not yet forgiveness, but not anger either. She called her father's driver to watch the boys. She drove. Night roads in Enugu glow like secrets. She reached the airport the next morning, flew to Lagos and arrived Ogudu by afternoon sun. Kelvin was out, hustling between shame and stubbornness. Ada opened the door. The apartment wore insecurity like a thin coat. Amaka saw a girl, not an enemy, not a queen, just a girl who had made a sharp choice in a soft season. She also saw something else, a glance that flickered and ran away. Ada's eyes kept sliding to her phone. A message lit it up. Don't forget tonight. Amaka paid the rent, not because Kelvin deserved peace, but because a child, any child, deserved a roof. She left cash on the table for groceries and prenatal vitamins. Thank you, Ada said, almost kneeling. Get up, Amaka said. Stand well. Life is long. As she turned to go, a small envelope fell from Ada's Bible and slipped under the TV stand. Amaka bent to pick it and saw a photograph. You may think the world is big. Sometimes it is just one compound with many rooms. In the photo, Ada stood with a woman in a wine-colored dress at an Uwambe in Festac, both of them laughing like promises. The woman was familiar, not because Amaka knew her, but because the city did. Sade, Madame Silk, the party planner who could turn a phone booth into a ballroom and a broom into a chandelier. Rumor said Sade was the motor behind Kevin's sudden confidence. Rumor said Sade built parties and broke homes with the same loud music. Ada saw Amaka sing. Silence folded the room like starch. She's my auntie. She helped me. She said Kelvin would take care of me. Ada stuttered, and her voice fell down the stairs. Amaka left without a word. She did not come to police anybody's life. She went back to Enugu and poured her energy into the training center. Kunle watched her like a man learning a new city on foot, slowly, corner by corner, careful not to bruise anything. On the day they unveiled the center, drummers sang her surname like a praise name. Her father pulled her aside later. A queen does not fight every dog that barks at her gate, he said. She makes sure the gate is strong. Amaka nodded. But gates are not just iron and bolts. They are also boundaries in the heart. She was building those too. Kevin spiraled. The contracts that used to land like mangoes now fell elsewhere. He went to see Sade at a lounge in Lekki, where glasses looked like expensive water and music smelled of perfume. You said money would flow, he complained. Sade smiled in a way that made men offer their watch. Baby, money follows courage, she said, resting her chin on her knuckles. Your first wife carried your engine. You need new pipelines. Bring your boys to my client's school. Post more. Appear rich. Richness comes to where it sees itself. Kelvin nodded like a student in nonsense class. He followed her advice. Posted shoes he borrowed. Diners he could not afford. Motivation quotes he did not understand. Ada watched him and held her stomach, quiet as a prayer rug. One evening, Kunle invited Amaka to a small jazz spot in Enugu where the saxophone cried like it was washing itself. They sat in a corner. He told her about his mother in Ibadan, who fried plantain, thin like secrets. She told him about her father's hands, how they were big and careful when he braided her hair as a child because her mother had died young. He reached for her hand. She let him hold it. It was not fireworks. It was the steady warmth of a safe room during rain. A week later, he came to the house with a small gift, a wooden toy car for Chimdi and a hand-painted kite for Ikeni. The boys yelled and ran and claimed him, with the simple authority of children.
Love does not always enter like a trumpet. Sometimes it comes through the kitchen, smelling of stew and patience. But drama was waiting at the gate like an uninvited uncle. Kelvin, discovering the rent was paid, thought Grace was a ladder back to comfort. He called Amaka again. Sweet tongued, she did not pick. He called her father. The chief was brief. Face your home, he said and ended the call. Sade, seeing Kelvin's softness, pushed him into a new deal, a partnership with a shady importer in trade fair markets. They promised quick cash. They delivered quick trouble. One night, police lights painted their door blue. Kevin slept at Alagbon for 2 days, tasting cement and regrets. Hada called Amaka again, crying, Please, he has been arrested. I don't know what to do. Amaka took the call, sighed like an old tire, and phoned a lawyer who owed her father a favor. Kelvin came out, humbled for 5 minutes. Then pride woke back up like a phone after charging. This is where the first twist showed its face like a lizard on a fence. At her next prenatal appointment, a nurse observed something that set up a quiet alarm. Not in a way that dragged the story into dark hospital corridors, but in a way that said, care is needed. Amaka quietly arranged a better daughter in GRA and covered the bills without writing her name anywhere. Grace is a quiet woman who hates noise. For the same week, a message arrived on Amaka's phone that made her sit very still. It came from a number she did not know. It contained one line. Ask Ada who put her in this story. Attached was a short video of a small party in a furnished shortlet in Yaba. In the video, Sade danced close to a man whose face the city knew like last year's hit song, Chief Eromoseli, the importer king behind many secret containers. Ada sat on the arm of a chair in the corner, a glass in her hand, her smile turned off. Kelvin stood by the door, looking like a boy in a big man's shirt. The camera panned past a table. On it, an open envelope with Kelvin's name on a consultancy agreement form, a shell firm connected to Chief Eromoseli. It looked like a funnel for washing money with soap that never foams. It looked like a trap with wine on the teeth. Amaka forwarded the video to her father's head of compliance. The woman wore glasses that saw through paper like X-ray. She called back in 1 hour. They tried to reroute some of our vendor payments last month. We blocked it, she said. If Kelvin is dancing near Eromoseli's people, he will soon be asked to carry a box he did not pack. Amaka felt her stomach tighten. She was not afraid for Kevin, the man who mocked loyalty. She was afraid for the two boys who would forever be linked to his name. Meanwhile, Kunle asked to meet her father, not with swagger, but with respect. They met on the veranda where birds talked too much. Kunle spoke like a man who measured twice and cut once. Sir, I'm not here to fix your daughter. She is not broken. I'm here to build with her if she will allow me, he said. The chief stared at him, then laughed like thunder rolling. We will see, he said. After Kunle left, he turned to Amaka. He is steady. Steady is the only boat that crosses long rivers, he said. Amaka smiled and went to check on her boys, who were making a fort out of sofa cushions and calling it Enugu Castle. Now, Scandal likes company. One afternoon, Ada knocked on a door that did not belong to her. It was Sade's office in Lekki. Glass, cold hair, fake flowers. Sade hugged her like a snake wearing perfume. Auntie, I can't do this again. Kelvin's enemies are everywhere. I'm tired, Ada said, tears decorating her face. Sade smiled stayed. Who told you to think? She said softly. Finish what you started, or you will go back to that one room in Owerri, where no man looked at you. Ada shook, nodded, and left. In the elevator, her phone buzzed. It was a message from Amaka. How are you today? That was it. No lecture, no judgment. Just a small light in a dark corridor. Ada sat in the elevator and cried until the security man pressed the button to open the door. From here, everything began to run like people when rain suddenly starts at a wedding. Kelvin tried to borrow against a property that was no longer his. The bank manager smiled with teeth and refused with pen. He tried to re-enter the oil servicing space,
through a shaky old contact in Port Harcourt. The contact took him to a meeting in a barge where the floor smelled like diesel and God. The deal crashed before it started. Word got to Sade that Kelvin was becoming heavy baggage. She withdrew the promised hand and started a new story with a younger man who said yes too easily. Ada, alone in Ogudu, began to fold into herself. Amaka noticed the silence in her replies. She went to Lagos again. At the apartment, she found Ada sitting on the floor with a baby bag packed and a small note on top. I can't be the woman who destroys other women. I'm sorry. Her stomach was no longer holding a secret. It was holding a timeline that would not wait. Amaka did not shout. She took Ada's hand. They left the apartment before the landlord could arrive with threats. They went to a quiet house that smelled of new sheets and lemon. Amaka called a doctor. We will manage, the doctor said. They did. Kelvin returned at midnight to an empty house and panic beat him. He called Sade, no answer. He called Ada, no answer. He called Amaka. She picked. Where is she? He shouted. Safe, Amaka said. Silence. Then he said the most honest sentence of his adult life. I don't know how to carry my own choices. She ended the call. The next morning, police visited Kelvin about the trade fair matter. He followed them quietly because he was tired of pretending he was bigger than rooms with questions. In Enugu, Kune became a regular figure, a patient one. He helped the boys build a kite that finally flew, wobbly but brave. He cooked amala for Amaka once and they laughed when the Ewedu misbehaved. He never asked about Kelvin unless she wanted to talk. When she did, he did not try to be wise. He just listened like a wide road. Love grew. He did not shout, it simply stayed. Then the second twist arrived like a night bus with all lights off. A letter came from a law firm in Abuja, addressed to Mrs. Amaka Kelvin. That name was already fading in her mouth. It was a notice of a will reading for Kelvin's mother, held in secret for years, to be opened if Kelvin ever took a second wife while his first was still under his roof. The condition had been written in simple English. Any son of hers who brought polygamy into our home would lose claim to any property attached to our family trust and to any benefit tied to Okudili and daughters through the marriage, effective immediately. The trustees had watched the internet, heard the drums, saw the wedding. The clause woke up. Amaka stared at the paper. Her father nodded slowly. Your mother-in-law was a quiet lioness, he said. She saw far. The will closed doors Kelvin did not even know were rooms. Creditors began to remember his name with energy. Sade's new boy took his position at the table where Kelvin used to sit and laugh like a man who would never be asked to pay. Kelvin called Amaka again. This time, he did not ask for money. He asked for a chance to see his sons. Amaka said yes, but only at a safe place with people around. They met in a small park in Enugu, where children shouted go without a ball. Kelvin looked smaller inside his shirt. He knelt and hugged the boys. He cried without noise. When he stood, he faced Amaka. I'm sorry, he said. The words were simple and late. But sometimes, late rain still helps dry ground. She nodded. Be well, she said. She did not promise friendship. She did not pour hot water. She let the moment be a moment. Nothing more. Weeks rolled. Ada delivered a baby girl. With the help of the careful doctor and the quiet money, Amaka placed under a different name. It was a hard day that ended soft. When the baby cried, Ada laughed with water on her face. Thank you, she whispered. Amaka smiled and touched the small fingers that curled like commas. Life was pausing to breathe. And then, my people, then the wall you thought was permanent opened like a door you never guessed had a keyhole. On a cool Friday night in Enugu, under soft lights and a moon that minded its business, Kunde asked Amaka to marry him. He did not kneel with a crowd. He asked her on the veranda, where her boys were inside building a Lego city that kept falling. He said, I will not perfect your life. I will share it. She said yes, not a scream, but like a seal on a letter already written. News spread gently. Invitations were sent. Not loud, not many. The plan was simple: a garden wedding at a boutique hotel near Polo Park. Her father smiled like sunrise. Her sons practiced walking with rings and not dropping them. Ada sent a text. If you allow me, I want to come and sit at the back and clap for you. Amaka said, come. On the wedding day, Lagos sent people in Gile that rose like small buildings and men in white that glowed like promise. Enugu sent birds to sing early and Amatan to mind its manners. The band tuned soft. The caterers lined coolers like soldiers. And the hair held a quiet excitement that tasted like fresh pineapple. At the gate, Kelvin stood in a clean but old suit. He had been invited. Amaka's choice. People whispered. He kept his head low. When the officiant raised his hand to speak, a commotion began at the far end of the garden. Two women entered, one tall and careful, one short and shaking with anger. Behind them, a man in a grey kaftan who walked like somebody who believed the ground hold him. The tall one wore a wine-colored dress. Yes, Shadi. The short one, her face was familiar from another past. A neighbor from Kelvin's youth in Benin who used to sell puff-puff and secrets. The man was Chief Eromoseli. Security moved. The crowd buzzed. Kole tightened his grip on Amaka's hands. We are fine, he whispered, but the hair had changed frequency. Shade did not look at Amaka. She looked at Kelvin and laughed. Tell them who you are, she shouted. Eromoseli raised the folder like a teacher, catching a student with copied homework. He started to speak of debts, of signatures, of nights when Kelvin promised things he did not own. The officiant stepped back. This was not his ministry. Kelvin opened his mouth, closed it, opened again. Before he could decide which truth to pick, Ada stepped out from the back row, the baby on her hip, and her voice rose clean like early bell. Tell them the real truth, she said, shaking. Tell them how you begged me to lie so your new investors would think you had a baby on the way during the wedding. Tell them how Sade promised me an apartment and a shop if I agreed to be the face. Tell them how the baby came later, from a night of loneliness and a man who is not famous and not rich and not here. The garden froze. Even the birds forgot to breathe. Every mouth was open, but the story was not finished. Kelvin staggered forward, eyes wide. Others, stop, he whispered. She shook her head. Tears ran like rainy season. I was wrong, she said to Amaka. I thought your silence was weakness. It was wisdom. Forgive me. Then she turned to Shade. You promised to set me up. You set me up to fall. Shade rolled her eyes like a generator starting. Small girl, close your mouth, she snapped. Eromoseli snorted and waved the folder. All of you are small fish, he said. We came for our money. And there, the final key turned in the final lock. The hotel manager, who had been pacing like a man stirring soup, stepped forward with a slim woman in glasses, the same compliance head from Okudili and Daughters, who saw through paper. She held up her own file. Chief Eromoseli, she said, voice steady. We have already forwarded to EFCC the documents connecting your shell company to attempted theft from our vendors. We invited them here because we assumed you would also show yourself. Kindly wait outside. Men in plain clothes who had been leaning on trees like cousins at a naming ceremony straightened and moved. Eromoseli's face changed color. Shade stepped back like a dancer missing her beat. Kevin's knees went soft. The crowd became a classroom without a teacher. Noise, surprise, the kind of whispers that make stories travel. Amaka turned to the officiant. Shall we continue? She asked, her voice pure. But there was one more shock, the one that would be the gist in hair salons from Yaba to Nsuka. From the back of the crowd, an old woman in a blue wrapper walked in. Her steps slow but certain. Chief Okudili stood up so fast his chair cried. Mama, he said, voice small. The woman smiled with history in her teeth. I told you I would come if the day ever needed me, she said. People looked at each other. Who was this? She stood before Amaka, lifted her chin, and placed a soft hand on her cheek. My daughter, I kept a secret too long, she said. When your mother died, I promised to carry one truth till you were strong enough to carry it yourself. The company you call your father's, it began with a woman's money, my money, hidden in his name, because the world at that time did not know how to respect a woman's wallet. I am your grandmother. I hid so you could stand. Today, I step into the sun. The place went silent like a power cut. Chief Okudili's eyes shone. He bowed to his mother. Mama, forgive me, he whispered. You told me to tell her when she was ready. I waited for this day. The old woman nodded. I am not hungry. I am tired of secrets. She turned and looked at Kelvin, then at Kunle, then at Ada, then at the baby. All of you chasing wind, she said. See this woman? She is the gate. If you go through her with respect, you will enter the compound of peace. The officiant cleared his throat. A small sound. Shall we? He asked gently, this time. Amaka took Kunle's hand. The boys stood close, serious as little elders. Ada sat at the back, crying and smiling at the same time, holding her child like a promise she intended to keep properly now. Kelvin stood to one side, hands shaking, face wet, the ground under him full of lessons. Sade tried to slip away, but a plainclothes officer guided her kindly to a chair. Eromosele discovered that the world becomes very small when the law looks for you. The vows were said. They were simple. They were not poetry, but they were true. When the officiants announced them husband and wife, the garden exhaled. You think the shock has finished? It has not. At the reception, under lights strung like small moons, the old woman asked for the microphone. I want to make an announcement, she said. This hotel you are in, this garden you are dancing in, I bought it 2 months ago and put it in my great-grandson's names. If any man thinks he can move their mother again without her consent, he will find that the floor under his feet is not floor. It is water. The crowd shouted. Laughter rolled like beads. Drums heard their cue and began to talk. People danced. Food arrived like forgiveness. Jollof that knew what it was doing. Goat's meat that respected itself. Zobo cold enough to clean the past from your throat. Later that night, when the lights were low and the air was soft and Enugu carried the moon like a borrowed plate, Kelvin stood at the gate, looking for a question. Amaka walked to him. They stood without words for a moment that was not war. He cleared his throat. I have nothing left to give except truth, he said. I thought a second wife would make me larger. It made me small. I thought your silence was weakness. It was a warning bell I refused to hear. I am sorry. Amaka looked at him, not as judge, not as enemy, but as someone who had finished a class and passed. Be a father, she said. Start there. Build from there. The rest is not my work anymore. He nodded and left, quieter than he had ever been in his life. When the last guest left and the last drum sighed and the last light hummed, Kunle and Amaka sat in the grass with their shoes off. The boys asleep in chairs like kings who had danced their own coronation. Ada sent a test that simply said, I named her Inkem my own. Amaka smiled. The old woman, already asleep in a room upstairs, dreamed of the days when she counted coins under a kerosene lamp and whispered to God that one day women would stand without hiding their pockets. Somewhere between late night and early morning, a new wind turned in the trees. People in Nigeria talked for days about the wedding that became a courtroom, that became a coronation, about the quiet wife who moved like the law, about the party planner who discovered that not all parties end with cake, some end with handcuffs, about the importer who finally imported himself into trouble, about the old woman who stepped out of the shadow and rewrote history with one sentence, about a man who learned too late that a second wife cannot be a bandage for a first wound, and about love, the kind that does not make promises it cannot keep, the kind that shows up with small toys and large patience, the kind that builds a home where children's laughter is the loudest money. If you ask me what the moral is, I will tell you in simple English. In this life, you can shout and win a small battle, or you can plan and win a whole war without raising your voice. Respect is not a shout, it is a boundary. Wealth is not loud, it is structured. Silence is not always weakness. Sometimes it is a trap for fools. And love, real love, does not fear quiet rooms. It grows there. So if you ever hear someone say, I will marry another woman, remember this story. Remember how fire eats the house that trusts it too much. Remember how a gate opens and closes at its owner's will. Remember how a woman packed her bags, took her sons, kept her dignity, and left a man alone with his noise. Remember how she found a steadier love, how a baby became a better promise, how an old secret became a new foundation. Remember that the loudest thunder in this story was the calm woman who did not argue. She simply changed the weather. And when the last gist has finished, and the last video has been posted, and the last friend has said, "Ha, did you hear?" The truth will still be there, sitting with its leg crossed, smiling, because truth does not need to rush. It knows we will all meet it at the gate. The end. The moral lesson of this story is silence is not weakness. Sometimes it is wisdom and power. A wise person doesn't waste energy fighting with words. Instead, they plan, act, and let their actions speak louder than arguments. Please leave a comment, like, share, and don't forget to subscribe. Thanks for watching.